Turning now to your politics, a mammoth $1.2 trillion spending package finally on the table. Both parties in Congress racing against the clock to try and avoid a Friday night government shutdown. But hurdles still remain before the deal reaches the president's desk to be signed. Can Congress get it done in time? Here to discuss this and more is Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College. Good morning, Caroline.
Great to see you, Giselle. Good morning.
Always. So Congress on a race to beat the clock, as you well know, coming to a rare bipartisan agreement to pass this $1.2 trillion package to avoid a shutdown Friday. It seems both sides got something they wanted. Break it down for us.
Well, it's a long list of items, but the Democrats got $1 billion in expanded funding for Head Start, which is essentially preschool for poor kids. Republicans got 22,000 more border agents. So both sides got a lot of what they wanted, and this is why we are finally making it to the finish line. And of course, the question is whether or not we can get it passed by Friday. Although if they get it passed by Sunday, it won't cause a major government shutdown. It won't be a major inconvenience for anyone. I should also note 5.2% increase for military spending, which both sides of the aisle supported.
Rare bipartisanship. Let's see if it gets through. All right. Still no critical aid, though, for Ukraine. But there's a proposal that is gaining traction with Republicans to give Ukraine a loan. Is this the way to get that aid through? And what happened to that discharge petition? Is that still on the table?
Well, the discharge petition is such a long shot. It requires 218 votes in the House. And if you recall, with all these Republican members leaving, they're only at 219. So essentially it would be everyone but what? Speaker Johnson? It's just a long shot. But yes, the loan is a proposal from Republicans, specifically Lindsey Graham, saying, look, out of the $60 billion package, maybe $12 million will be a loan. This is a way to try to appease Trump, who is staunchly opposed to extending more aid to Ukraine at this point.
All right. Let me ask you about the GOP impeachment probe into President Biden. It seems to be unraveling. They can't provide any evidence of a crime yet. Take a listen to this hot mic moment for one Republican lawmaker, and I'll ask you about it on the other side.
That your side of the aisle requested.
Mm-hmm. You can't make this stuff up.
You can't.
This is Jurassic Park. Gee.
This is a Jurassic Park scenario. Is this impeachment essentially over? Did it backfire on Republicans?
Well, I don't think it's over. I think it's always been a ghost impeachment. They didn't have a whole lot of evidence going into this, but the whole point of this is that it helps Donald Trump during his presidential campaign. It's a very smart move on the part of Republicans, because then they can say, yeah, he's twice impeached, but Biden also had an impeachment hearing, right? And so that's the point of this. And I will say, you know, I like Jurassic Park. This is more like Keystone Cops watching this. I mean, their key witness is in jail right now for lying to the committee.
Yeah, that's a little footnote there. All right, in the Senate, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer causing a firestorm, as you know, calling for the removal of Benjamin Netanyahu. This, as Speaker Johnson may invite the Israeli Prime Minister to Congress, kind of reminiscent of 2015, right, when Netanyahu addressed Congress purposely bypassing Obama. What are you seeing here? And is this, you know, an insult to President Biden?
Well, it's intended to be an insult to President Biden. It is very clear that Schumer's comments, which were praised by the White House, were likely done in coordination with the White House. Essentially, Schumer is saying what Biden cannot say without getting in hot water. And so, as you pointed out, Schumer called for elections. He said, you know, when the fighting ceases, that there would be new elections, and that would obviously replace Netanyahu. Netanyahu is responding by playing into the hyper-partisanship in the United States, and it will work in his favor, likely, given the fact that Republicans still control the House, which is the purse strings.
Right. All this is happening while Antony Blinken is back in the Middle East. He's trying to get a ceasefire deal done, Caroline, and those hostages released. From what you're hearing, how likely does this quell the progressive left's cry for a ceasefire?
Well, I think the only thing that's going to quell that is an actual ceasefire, right? We are 32,000, likely mostly civilians dead, about 2/3 women and children. We have children who are starving now. So Blinken this is his 6th visit to the region. He's stopping Israel first on this trip. He said that the gap is getting more narrow in terms of what separates Hamas and Israel from having a deal. So I believe him that we are closer to a deal. The question is when that will happen. And it's obviously needed immediately, given the number of civilians who are being killed in Gaza.
Right. All right, let's turn now to the former president's orbit. The former president doubling down, saying any American Jew who votes for a Democrat hates their religion, hates Israel. What do you make of that kind of rhetoric?
Well, he's obviously trying to win an election. Donald Trump has always used this kind of fiery, divisive rhetoric. I don't think it's helpful in a time where we have hyperpartisanship. And of course, it doesn't embrace the complexity of this situation, which is this is a 2,000-year conflict, and we need to treat it as such. It didn't just happen on October 7th. I think reasonable people can look at it and condemn what happened on October 7th, or the tactics, certainly, and they can also look at what's happening in Gaza right now and condemn that as well.
Right. So we have 30 companies that have turned down funding Trump's nearly $500 million bond, Caroline. Does Letitia James start seizing his property on Monday, or does he file for bankruptcy?
You know, I don't think this is a man who will file for bankruptcy, because he would be admitting that he didn't have the wealth that he claims that he has. To be fair, and in his defense, anyone who's in real estate is going to have their assets. They're not going to be liquid. Their assets are going to be mostly tied up in real estate, and that's where we are. Letitia James has said that she will move immediately. She does have to go through the court system. But at this point in time, it does appear that bankruptcy would be Trump's real only option, other than losing some of his properties, his golf courses, possibly Mar-a-Lago, some of his buildings.
Yeah, there's a fear that some billionaire or foreign power even could step in to pay that bond. But there are dangers there, aren't there?
Obviously, if a foreign power steps in, we would have to look at the source of that. But there are even issues with U.S.-based billionaires. If anyone stepped in during an election and made a major contribution to a candidate for the presidency, that could be considered a campaign contribution. So folks are probably not going to step up and help him out on this one, not even his billionaire buddies.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on Monday morning. So in the latest polls, President Biden seems to have overtaken Trump, many national polls, actually. Biden's fundraising is also growing, certainly over what Trump has been able to raise. What do you attribute to this to Biden's success? Like, why do you think this is happening for him now? Do you think it was the State of the Union?
I think it's a combination of the State of the Union and calming Democrats' fear that Biden wouldn't be a strong enough candidate, coupled with this ruling against Trump and what's happening with his inability to pay, to fund the $454 million bond. It really hits right at his brand. With that said, we are many months out from an election, and I anticipate these polls will go up and down. I also anticipate this will be one of the closest elections in U.S. history. So the polls now are confirming what we know will happen in November. This is going to be a very close race.
And we still have 8 months to go. Okay.
8 months.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Before I let you go, the Supreme Court, I have to ask you about this, saying Texas, the state of Texas, can arrest, deport undocumented immigrants. This is a power traditionally held by the federal government, right? It's been temporarily stopped by an appellate court in this whiplash back and forth of rulings. But talk to me about how dangerous this wave of Supreme Court decisions is that gives more power to the state and basically renders the federal government then powerless.
Well, it's especially a threat in something that has to involve national security. And that's why the federal government has always had purview over immigration. So this would be a significant departure from our national policy. And this, in terms of national security, it comes into effect, for example, the state of Texas plans to deport people to Mexico without that country's permission. It could get us into some hot water. So yes, this, like abortion, would be a very big turn for the court. The question is, it's balling back and forth between these lower courts, whether or not the Supreme Court will actually uphold this. It looks like that's a possibility, which would mean that 50 states would have 50 immigration policies, and that would be an absolute nightmare for people who are trying to immigrate to the United States.
Yeah, and before I let you go, I do want to bring you back here locally, back home to the great state of California. That Prop 1 passed by the skin of its teeth. What does that say about the embattled governor's leadership right now, that he had a lot of pushback and headwinds on that proposition?
He absolutely did, because of the price tag and the lack of great data on efficacy, I would argue. But I think it also speaks to the fact that Governor Newsom obviously has national aspirations. And anytime your state official goes and runs or puts their name in, even informally, for a national office, poll numbers go down because folks want you to stay in California. Although I doubt Newsom will stay in California for too long come 2028.
Are you having fun yet, Caroline?
Well, it's certainly, what day of the week is it, Giselle?
It's Thursday.
Thursday. Almost Friday.
Listen, always wonderful to have you here. Thank you, breaking down all the politics for us. It's a blood sport for sure. I appreciate you being with us and lending us your vital expertise. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.